that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
We can make our beloved country the source of all the dreams and the opportunities that she was missing.
Welcome to the American Idiots Podcast, the show where we take the most divisive headlines and put them to the debate with our diverse group of hosts. Join us as we leave no story uncovered and spare no politician. What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the American Idiots Podcast. I am Money Mike, and I'm going to be joined shortly by my two co-hosts here on the American Idiots, COVID Joe and the Manic Hispanic. Of course, before we get that done, we're going to go ahead and take care of some housekeeping. If you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe to our YouTube page. Hit the notification bell. That way you're notified whenever we upload, which is usually, schedules permitting, been 7:30 at on Monday evenings. And if you're watching us on Facebook, go ahead and give the page a like, share the page if you would, please. And if you're listening to our audio-only version on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, go ahead and drop us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, all of that good stuff, if you would, please. But with that being said, I am now going to be going ahead and bringing in my co-host. I can't grab him with a piece of food in his mouth this week, but the Manic Hispanic, how you doing?
Doing good, man. It's been a good week last week. Good weekend.
Nice and relaxing.
The rain coming through, cooling things down out here.
No,
very good.
But today was a little warmer. To be fair, today was a little warmer, and I allowed myself this week to get into that, like, Arkansas, where you have that time of year where you're like, okay, maybe it's finally going to start cooling off or, get towards the fall. And then today hit, and I was like, well, shit, it's Arkansas. What can you do?
Yeah.
But
you get the back and forth weather now.
Exactly. It was definitely nice to have the rain, though. We haven't had that in quite a while, and we needed it.
Yes.
I was actually, me and my wife were driving over the river bridge the other day, and I think it was last Saturday, and we were coming back from a Chinese restaurant, and I told her, I was like, if you look, the river's probably way low at this point. And she was talking about how it, a couple of years ago, it was flooding. It's just interesting how Arkansas works, but glad you had a good week. Do I see?
It's not just Arkansas. Oh yeah, that actually happened a couple hours ago.
Oh snap!
It's not just Arkansas though. I mean, you're looking at Lake Mead drying up over in Nevada, and you got flooding in Kentucky.
It's that fucking global warming that's the biggest issue facing Americans today. I will give credit, though. Gas prices are finally way under $4.
They are starting to come down, yeah.
I mean, and to be fair, as much as we were pissed at Joe for where the gas prices got, sure, cool, maybe it's starting to work out. I don't know. I'm open to interpretation. But my thought process goes automatically to, okay, we're rolling out of summer going into kids about to go back to school. Of course, the gas prices are going to drop a little bit naturally. But with that being said, we'll go ahead and bring on the third member of our panel, Mr. COVID Joe, or Bad Brad. How you doing, COVID Joe?
I'm doing good. I appropriately went with that name to celebrate the accomplishment of Joe Biden to overcome COVID, and he fucks that up and he gets plaxoid rebound. So I guess he's doomed to fail. But anyway, speaking of the gas prices, I will not give Joe Biden credit for the lowering of the gas prices because if you remember correctly, they didn't take credit for them rising. So if you can't have them rising, you can't have them lowering.
I definitely don't give the credit to Joe. I'm just saying at least they're finally coming down.
Well, no, I get that. They are coming down. Although, however, on my way in today, I noticed that a couple of gas stations in the Little Rock area were sitting at $3.89 to $3.99. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's starting to go. It's in that weird phase. So here in Sherwood, it's between 360 and 370 right now, which is pretty nice. Plus, you have, I went and took advantage of that nice little promo from Sam's Club for $10 for the year for the membership, and gas is usually pretty cheap at Sam's Club as well.
Is it $10 now? It was $8, and then it went to if you spent $45 or more, which is not hard to do at Sam's. You got a free membership, and then I guess it went to 10. I don't know. I don't go to Sam's because, well, I don't have the requirement to buy in bulk. So.
Yeah, that's true too. We really don't.
It's like, hey, I need some paper towels. Why don't you bring that 18-wheeler over here and drop that, the package that I bought off? I mean, it's good if you own like a, like I guess Manny could use Sam's to do the snack bar. I was
waiting for you to finish talking because that's what I was going to bring up, man. Most of our stuff comes from Sam's whenever we're doing our concession stands at our live events.
But I mean, for a household, I don't need you to.
Right. The household benefits, but I'm talking about our professional wrestling events. We go there. That's where we get the majority of the stuff for our concession stands.
Well, I mean,
and it's conveniently it allots you the price per unit, so that's pretty convenient if you're trying to do something.
Let's be honest here. Old COVID Joe. If monkeypox gets to be as big a deal as what they're trying to put it out to be, good Lord, we know we're going to need to be buying toilet paper in bulk. Fuck,
oh, my gosh.
Everyday American thinks everything requires toilet paper, bread, and milk.
I will never forget, and that's one of the things that, if we're lucky enough to be here in 20 years, I will never forget cruising into the Dollar General because that was probably the only thing that you could go into that you didn't have to play American Gladiator to get inside the store.
Right.
Well, it was like Walmart. It was like, okay, you got to stage one, you got to pass the conveniently placed shopping carts, and then you got to go around the orange barrier, and then Nitro's up there with his tennis ball trying to shoot you and shit if you don't have a mask. That's crazy.
Oh, Lord. Okay, gentlemen, I think we're going to have quite a bit to beat the old Democratic Party up on tonight, including this first story. 17 members, about a week ago now, 17 members of 17 Democratic lawmakers were arrested, including members of the squad, while protesting at the Supreme Court. And we have a story here from WCNC on that.
Our choice! Our choice! Our choice! Our choice! Our choice! We won't go back! We won't go back! We won't go back! We won't go back! We won't. Our choice! Our choice! Our choice! Our body! Our choice! Our body! Our choice! Our body! Our choice! Our choice! Our choice!
May I have your attention, please? Be advised. You are currently participating in illegal demonstration activity. Cease and desist or you will be arrested. This is Captain Mendoza with the United States Capitol Police. Be advised you are currently engaged in illegal demonstration activity. Cease and desist or you will be arrested. That's your third and final warning.
Hands up our body! 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 Stand up, fight back! Stand up, fight back!
So, gentlemen, we saw some video there, obviously, of the protest as it was going on. You saw there the last clip. I believe that was Iliad Omar, I believe is how you say her name, being carried away in handcuffs. But my thinking here, and COVID, I know you weren't here last week to hear us talking about this. But again, people are making such a large deal of this. And I'm not here to say that it's not a big deal. What I'm here to say is now you pivot. Here's the moment where you pivot. They actually made it easier, is what I said on our last show, COVID, is the fact that they've made it easier. It's easier to influence a state election than it is a federal one.
Well, honestly, man, to simplify any statement made about the process, number one, I hope you put that clip in as a shit show, because that's all that was. I mean, them getting arrested wasn't a big deal. I mean, they probably got out, and no, it was a show. It's all it was they became, in the sense of, not actually physically passing away, they just became martyrs for the cause by, being arrested. But be honest with you, overturning Roe v. Wade was a win for democracy, plain and simple. Now it's a state issue. People say, well, it's now illegal. No, it's really not still illegal. It just becomes a state issue and not a federal issue, which is what it should have been the entire time anyway. There's too much regulation and oversight in the federal government in the state level. And if you have a problem with the decision, now you have the opportunity to either elect state representatives that fit your mindset, and it's a win for democracy. Nobody's saying that there's not, like South Carolina, for example, it is still legal to have an abortion in terms of medical and/or ancestor rape. It's just not as easy and prevalent as it was when the federal oversight was in place. That's all that is.
Right. The thing God pointed out last week was that all the Supreme Court did was let them know, hey, this is not a constitutional issue, so we don't need to decide that nationally.
I completely agree with you. Here's the thing, and Brad, it's interesting you bring up the situation with the oversight and allowing the federal government into this process. Actually, when you think about it too, they've gotten a lot of stuff away from the government being inside of these facilities and being able to control what goes on in these facilities from a federal level. So even that aspect of it has made it easier. Should we elect, I'll use Arkansas, because again, in the not so recent or in the not so distant past, we had a Democrat governor in Mike Beebe. Should these things happen, they've actually made less regulation for these Planned Parenthood or whatever it would be called in this instance to make a foothold in certain states.
And it's always been my theory that in certain cases where you have the ectopic pregnancy where it's obviously not going to survive and any of that, I can understand. But if you're using an abortion as a bad decision eraser, well, then that's just plain simple wrong. And you have to look at laws on the books in states like New York where you are allowed to terminate the pregnancy 2 hours after delivery, up to 2 hours or so. So, it's that Pandora's box that you open up. Leave it at a state level and regulate it there. The federal government does not need to be involved in every single decision that is processed in the 50 states.
Well, and I think the three of us, again, and Manny, maybe I somewhat remember you saying maybe you disagreed with this, but I think the three of us are on the big three, for example, rape, incest, and the health of the mother. I think we all three have agreed. Manny, I somewhat feel like I remember you saying there was something in there that you didn't agree with. But I think we're all three basically on the same level with the big three. And then Manny honestly said something that was 100% correct at this point. What's the point of plan B at this point? If you make a decision to have sex and you cannot make that decision to go get a plan B if you have unprotected sex, then again, why are we waiting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? As much as I think the current law is around 6 to 7 weeks that you can still get an abortion. Are you telling me? I know people that make lesser decisions in a lot less time. Like we're talking like days that people will make decisions on houses, but you're telling me you can't make an informed adult decision on like 6 weeks worth of time? You're telling me that you should be able to have the ability to terminate a pregnancy at any point within the 40 weeks? Like, where do we draw the line at a certain point where it's just like, bro, you're just doing this just to freaking because you don't want the responsibility. You don't want the child. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. This generation, and I guess I would still be considered part of this generation. Hell, I don't know. But this generation, they don't want consequences for their actions. And I feel like this whole thing, if we can address the big three, which even in Arkansas, which has one of the strictest abortion laws currently in place in the country, allows for the big three to make sure that that woman has the ability to go get an abortion. Where's the bigger issue? Where's the issue outside of that? And the issue to me is you just want the ability to, if you wake up tomorrow and say, hey, I don't want to be pregnant anymore. It's fucking 90 degrees outside and I'm sweating like a fucking whore in church. I don't have to be pregnant anymore. Maybe I'm missing something. Manny, COVID?
I don't think you're missing anything. But that's if you bring up points like their poor decision making, then all of a sudden the term slut shaming comes out, and then you've opened a whole different box of worms on that. So I mean, it's like,
well,
I don't know.
It's not even that we're saying you're a slut or anything like that. It's that you are making a decision. It's going back to holding people accountable. People don't want to be accountable. People just want to be able to do what they want. There's no consequences. It's fucking the 60s and we can do drugs and AIDS doesn't exist and all of this shit.
Well, I mean, you talk about,
and that's not reality.
But accountability, you just hit the nail on the head as far as it goes. Accountability is where the problems are starting to lie, because you look at, just like with the instance of racism in the police department, where's the accountability for the reason the police are there? That's the problem in American society today. Every single thing that you deal with, there's no accountability. We talked to a story the other later that we'll probably get to later on in the show. But, there's accountability for your actions, but then there's got to be accountability if you're doing if you're doing it for other reasons besides the truth. So, like you said, I think it's accountability.
Y'all are talking about accountability, but I think that goes more toward entitlement. Ooh. People think they should get what they want, and they think they shouldn't have to deal with what they don't want to.
Oh, that's a very good point. I mean,
so it's not just the accountability that they're trying to shirk off. They're also trying to say, well, I deserve to have this and I deserve to have that, and oh, well, that doesn't suit me, so I shouldn't have to do that. I mean, you take it into those pronouns that people are starting to go for. Oh, I shouldn't be addressed as a sir, start calling me thee, them, and that.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
entitlement issue.
There's a lot
And
of
all
things.
of that, in my opinion, started when we started focusing on the children and their whole coddling
Yeah.
by
Everybody's a
making sure
special
that
snowflake.
everybody had their trophy just because they were present.
Very true. Everybody's a special snowflake, and we should take care of little Bobby and little Joey. I still remember when I was getting ready to get out of school and graduate high school, they freaking were talking about getting rid of red ink on teachers' stuff so that they couldn't make the child feel bad for missing stuff. I'm like, dude, I used to get my ass
Retarded.
whooped if I brought home an F. There wasn't no time for me not to feel bad.
If you continue to lower the standards, then we will be an even dumber society.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to have some dumbass doctors and freaking lawyers and all sorts of, well, I mean, the lawyers. But anyway, we're going to have some dumbass doctors and stuff coming up before too long if we just keep lowering that bar, as you said. And speaking of lowering the bar, it seems like the January 6th commission is going to get to the point where they're just like, was Donald Trump breathing on January 6th? Well, he was responsible for it. Steve Bannon is the biggest story that's happened out of the January 6th commission. He was found guilty and charged for obstruction of justice, or not obstruction, excuse me, for what's the word I'm looking for? Where you interrupt the court, Manny. Contempt? Contempt. He was found guilty of contempt of court for not showing up for the hearings for January 6th. And they're trying to link it to Trump. And I mean, I'm going to talk about the link here. And again, we talked about it, till we're blue in the face as far as, what do you have to hide? Why won't you speak? But really, that's the only link I can find. We have a story here from CNN.
Breaking news this hour, a jury has just found Steve Bannon guilty on both counts of criminal contempt of Congress. Now, the former Trump strategist faces a mandatory minimum of 30 days in jail.
CNN's Sarah Murray joins us now from the courthouse. Sarah, we're also joined by Ellie Honig and Nick Ackerman here. Sarah, tell us what's just happened in the courtroom.
Well, Steve Bannon has been found guilty on 2 counts of criminal contempt of Congress. He smiled and smirked, my colleague Caitlin Poland says, when the verdict was read. She was in the courtroom as this was happening. So I think we can see this former White House chief strategist is just as defiant as ever. With this conviction, he faces 30 days behind bars at a minimum, as well as potentially thousands of dollars of fines. This is not something that's going to happen immediately, though. The judge has set October 21st as the sentencing date, so it'll still be a few months before we know what sentence is actually going to be handed down. It's also been clear from Bannon's attorneys kind of throughout this trial that they do intend to appeal. And because these are misdemeanor charges, it's very possible that we could see the judge delay any kind of, whether Bannon has to kind of serve any kind of sentence until after they go through that appeals process. We just don't know that yet. What we do know is this is a big boost to the House Select Committee. This is, a reaffirmation of their investigative power, of their subpoena power at a time when they're wrangling with a bunch of different witnesses. Peter Navarro comes to mind. He's another person who defied his subpoena and is poised to go to trial over that. It's also a win for the Justice Department. They've come under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of criticism in terms of how they're investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. I think people have wanted to see, more from them in a number of cases. In this case, they got a very prominent conviction.
All right, Sarah, stay with us. I want to go to Nick, just joining the panel. Your reaction to this guilty verdict?
I think it's extremely significant. And the reason really is in light of what happened yesterday in the House hearing. Yeah. What we found there was on that day, on January 6th, Donald Trump was asked repeatedly by people in the White House, everybody around him, including his family, to get up there and tell his supporters to go home, to stand down, and to leave the Capitol. And what you find here is that who were the people that were egging him on? Who were the people that really pushed this entire, plan of violence? And obviously, Steve Bannon comes to light as the first person on the list. Yeah. I mean, he was in charge of the war room at the Warwick Hotel. This is where all of the people who were really not government employees, Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, his chief investigator, all of these people were centered around there, none of them government employees, none of them were like Matthew Partinger, who got up and said, you know, I took my oath very seriously to defend the Constitution. None of these people took an oath. These were all ne'er-do-wells, people who were just around Donald Trump and basically doing his bidding. So the fact that one of the chief architects of January 6 was convicted today on these two charges, I think is extremely significant.
And we've learned that there were those two calls between Steve Bannon and former President Trump just before, on his War Room podcast, he said, all hell will break loose tomorrow. And that's what the committee wanted to know, what he knew leading up to that statement.
But even further, we had the other little bits of detail that came out during the course of the hearings. Yeah. One, that there was a telephone call from the chief of staff of Donald Trump to Roger Stone. Now, what was that about? We don't know who was talking to whom, but we know Roger Stone was also at the Warwick Hotel. We also know that that he was asked, the chief of staff was asked to actually go to the Warwick Hotel, and it took someone like Cassidy Hutchinson to say, look, you shouldn't be going there, and he still went by phone. So we don't know what was said there, but there is a whole bunch of tantalizing little details that came out in the course of that hearing that make you wonder what was going on at the Warwick Hotel.
But Ellie, does this make it harder for the committee to get the information that they were seeking from Steve Bannon, or easier? I mean, the reason, just to remind everybody, that he was just found guilty is because he didn't hand over documents and he didn't show up, though he was subpoenaed. So will they ever get to see the information that they wanted now that he's been convicted?
So it's important to know this is about punishment. This is not about forcing somebody to testify. Steve Bannon will not testify unless he just has a unilateral change of heart. Now, this is a really important win for DOJ and for Congress, but it's a qualified win. And here's why. Steve Bannon is being punished now because he defied a congressional subpoena. DOJ charged him. They got their conviction. That's the win. But there's still a bit of a mixed message here because remember, DOJ chose not to charge Mark Meadows. They chose not to charge Dan Scavino. So Steve Bannon is going to federal prison for at least 30 days unless he wins on appeal, and I give him next to no chance of winning on appeal, while Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino did the same thing. They defied the subpoena. They provided no evidence. They left some of the gaps in the evidence that Nick was talking about, and they are walking scot-free. But better that somebody is held accountable than nobody.
Sarah, let me come back out to you. It was a last-ditch effort. Some viewed it as a way to avoid this trial by telling the committee, I will participate. I will cooperate. Does this conviction preclude any future participation with that committee now?
You know, I think that one of the issues always around this case is that agreeing to testify was never going to solve his criminal contempt of Congress charges. You know, we heard from the prosecution today, give me a break. You know, why is he suddenly making this offer in the days leading right up to his trial? You know, prosecutors sort of cast this as an insincere effort and said he hasn't even started, you know, handing over documents, which is one of the things he's now been found guilty of. So they sort of saw it as a ploy. You know, if you're Steve Bannon at this point and you are now convicted of these two counts, you sort of wonder, what is the impetus at this point to be at all helpful to the committee? The reality is they may never get the information that they were seeking from Steve Bannon. And I think, you know, the Willard Hotel conversation you were just having is a good example of that. The committee made clear that one of the things that they wanted to hear from Steve Bannon is what was going on in this sort of war room that he and others were participating in at the Willard Hotel. And we have heard very little of that in these public hearings from the January 6th committee.
So, Manny, again, they're making this a large deal and a win for the January 6th Commission and all of this. But, you know, he brought up a very good point. Number one, does this mean that Steve Bannon even has to do shit now? Or does that just mean Steve Bannon gets to sit there for 30 days in probably a club fed and fucking wait his time out, and now he doesn't have to do shit? Like, this was probably the stupidest route the commission could have fucking went if they really wanted the information. That's another question. Is it really about getting the information, or is it about just punishing these people?
I think it's about punishing people. Well, I think it's about punishing people, but as they pointed out, there was 2 others that didn't get punished. And maybe that's why Bannon decided that he wasn't going to. Heck, they didn't. Nothing happened to them, so why should I?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's mind-blowing at this point. And again, you know, the assumptions and the broad leaps to conclusion from the gentleman there on that panel, the older gentleman, is just insane. He automatically calls Steve Bannon an architect of January 6th. Did Steve Bannon tell them and send out just a mass email to the amount of people that were there at that rally that day and the people that ended up going to the Capitol and say, hey, we're going to stage a rally and I'm going to say the day before that all hell's going to break loose, and then you're going to storm the Capitol.
Yeah.
And the fact that
I'm sure there were written instructions for all that too. These are the ways we're going in. Nobody follow, this direct path so that we can all go in and really cause problems. I want everybody to kind of pick a door somewhere or a window, let's be unorganized as possible.
Look, again, I've never wavered on the fact that the people who entered the Capitol that day need to be punished. I've never wavered on that, and I still wholeheartedly believe that. Now, with that being said, we're in a fucking goose chase to link this to Trump. That's all this fucking is.
Right. That's all the commission is trying to do. That's all the Democrats want, is that link to Trump. But I don't agree that everybody that entered the Capitol
touche.
should be convicted, because there is a difference in public property and private offices.
True. Everybody that did the stupid shit, I should say,
right,
should be punished. But with that being said, it makes no fucking sense. It really doesn't at this point. To make these broad leaps, I'm pretty sure. Now, we're not given too much credit, but I'm pretty sure that anybody with half a brain, if you're planning this giant ass fucking insurrection, as the January 6th Commission would like to call this, you're not going to go on your podcast or your radio show or whatever they said the day before and say, oh, all hell's going to break loose tomorrow.
Right.
Are you fucking kidding me? And we're using that. That phrase is the basis to call him an architect of the January 6th riot. What? That makes no fucking sense. Now, did the guy obstruct Congress and didn't do what he was supposed to do as a fucking citizen of this country when he was subpoenaed? Yes. Should he sit in jail for 30 days? Sure. What the fuck ever. Whatever the law says. But that still does not. We have not proven anything. Now,
grasping at straws.
Again, just like me and you have said before, though, I would be very interested in finding out why he's not wanting to fucking testify, because it definitely doesn't help that he's not willing to cooperate. So that's
right. But did we question why the other 2 weren't willing to cooperate?
Do I know?
Did we question why the other 2 weren't willing to cooperate?
I agree. Well, actually, I think we've both said, we've both said, what the hell, if you're guilty or if you're not guilty, why the fuck aren't you talking? But, it's just the leaps and bounds of CNN, the Democratic Party, everybody that is on this January 6th commissions, it's crazy to me. It's mind-blowing that we can go from, oh, he said this on his podcast, so he was definitely an architect. He was the one who was sending out the plans. And because he was at this hotel, that means that they were it was their war room, and they were just, you'd have thought the way they were describing this, it was a military fucking action. They had a war room, and they talked about it on the podcast the day before, and just all sorts of shit that's just dude, if you sit here and you slow down for half a second to think about this, as shitty as those people were that fucking did what they did on January 6th, that doesn't mean that Donald Trump, who again I'm not a supporter of, had any fucking thing to do with it. Not a thing. Hell, if anything, honestly, y'all are pushing me towards Trump than away from Trump because I'm defending the dude right now. Like, it's crazy to me how much they have a hard-on for this dude. For the first 2 years of his presidency, we were on the wild goose chase with Russia and being involved in the 2016 election. Now, for the first 2 years after his presidency, after he lost, we're on a wild goose chase to blame him for an insurrection for a bunch of fucking crazy people.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. And speaking
At the end of the day, there is no link, and they can't get past that.
And they can't, and they're going to continue to waste money. While inflation is at record numbers, they're going to continue to waste money, and they're going to continue to fucking not do shit for the rest of the. They're going to hopefully learn their lesson after November. And speaking of November, they won't. Speaking of November and record inflation, the question is building steam within the Democratic Party. Should Joe Biden be replaced at the top of the ticket in 2024? And we actually have a story here, I believe, from NBC News on this.
I have to start with you and this new polling, which is just incredible. If you think about how many Democrats are now saying that they think it's time for potentially another candidate in the next election cycle. What are your sources telling you at the White House? What is the reaction there behind the scenes?
Well, Kristen, as you well know, covering this beat along with me, there have just been a steady stream of difficult headlines for this White House, primarily about whether Democrats feel that President Biden is the right leader for this moment. Has his response on gun rights, on issues like abortion been strong enough, the kind of strong voice the party needs right now? And whenever I talk to White House officials about these stories, they often point to their view that this is really a minority view in the party, that these are just sort of a number of squeaky wheels who are getting attention in the media but don't represent where the party really is. That's what's so damaging, Kristen, about this new poll from the New York Times and CNN, because it says that the view that Joe Biden should not be the nominee in 2024 is not just a majority, but a super majority view in the party right now. That's difficult for this White House to ignore. Now, officially, of course, the White House is not commenting on a political poll. As you say, the officials behind the scenes are pointing, as Ron Klain is retweeting a lot today, that the poll does point out that Biden would, in fact, beat Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup if the election were today. Mark can speak to whether that argument is even a strong one for this White House. It is clear that to the extent that there is a rationale for Biden 2024 that Biden advisors are putting forward, it is this idea that he is still the only Democrat who has proven he can take on President Trump. Really, though, I think when you dive even deeper into the numbers, Kristen, the factor of the president's age really is the real uncomfortable issue for this White House to discuss. When I spoke with a top advisor recently about it, the advisor said that short of a time machine, there's really nothing we can do about the fact that, yes, the president is the oldest president in our country's history, but that dealing with this problem is something that you can really only show, you can't tell. And that's why the goal is, from when the president gets back from this trip to Saudi Arabia this week, to put him out on the road a lot, to have him do the kind of events today, touting administration achievements, showing his strengths as a retail politician, to try to dispel this notion that he is too old to handle the job at this point.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news.
So, Manny, within the Democratic Party, they're seeing what we're seeing. How does Joe pull the nose up on this? Like
that's a nationwide thing, not just Democratic Party. Everybody's seeing that. It's really going to come down to how many people he can convince to stay with him.
Is there any convincing? I mean, they use the term supermajority in the Democratic Party that are not wanting him to continue to run. At this point,
right.
Jimmy Carter got a chance to run for re-election.
And the thing I'm looking at is they don't want to say in as many words that they don't have the confidence in Biden while they are still looking at him. Otherwise, all credibility in him goes away. Even the ones that are still, backing him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they're not able to say it yet that, hey, no, we're not going with him.
Yeah, I mean, we're still 2 years out, and God knows what it would look like if everybody just jumped off the ship, which, it is a sinking ship. If everybody just jumped out of the sinking ship 3 months before the midterms, God knows the bloodbath would get even worse. However, here's the weird thing. Democrats are jumping off the sinking ship for crazy reasons. He's not doing enough on gun control. He's not doing enough on abortion. He's not doing enough on this and that and this and that. Nobody's mentioned the economy is garbage. Nobody's mentioned his fucking failed policy at the border. Nobody's mentioned his failed withdrawal from Afghanistan. Nobody's mentioned his failure at every single turn in foreign policy. Nobody's mentioning those 4 major factors that are lessening the U.S. in the view of the rest of the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, the other thing that you got to look at is we're at a near war with Russia, so they definitely don't want to go down that rabbit hole and saying, well, we don't really have any kind of confidence in him because that will only amp Russia up even more. Same thing with China.
Well, if you're Russia and you're Putin and you're that fucker that's the leader of China, you're sitting back and you've got to know that we are like, what the fuck is this dude doing at this point? Like,
right, but once they come out and say it's still a different ball game.
Right now, it's all speculation until it's confirmed. And I could definitely see your point. But it's just, it's crazy to me that, and I mean, let's be honest. If you make a move from Joe at this point, the only feasible option you have is Kamala. And Kamala's linked to this turd that is an administration. There's no way.
I think they're going to start fishing for somebody new, somebody fresh.
Okay, so you think that's not you think that they're just going to blow it wide open?
Yes, I do.
And that would be interesting. I mean, here's the thing, though. We took a gamble as an American people. 83 million people took a gamble because we obviously didn't like the direction that the country was heading in the Trump administration. Now, 83 million people, okay, I won't say 83 million, but probably reasonably half of those people are sitting here scratching their head thinking, shit, we fucked up. Are the Democrats going to be able to? This stench doesn't just lie at Joe's feet. This stench is going to lie at any Democrat that follows him's feet.
Yes, it is, but you've got to remember it's going to depend on who they pull out. It's going to depend on what is said from the person that they pull out to put in front of the camera. At the end of the day, you and I can both agree that Biden didn't win an election. Trump lost an election.
Oh, absolutely. All day, every day.
Okay. So all they have to do is show a new person and let the country know that this definitely isn't Trump and it sure isn't going to be another Biden.
Well, and I agree, but here's the thing, though. If the Democrats are pissed at Joe for not being radical enough, here's the problem. America's already having an issue with the Green New Deal. It's record unpopularity. This administration, record unpopularity. If we go even more extreme, there's no path forward for me to think that a Democratic candidate can win in 2024 unless something amazing happens. Again,
right. And we won't know if something amazing happens until we see who it is that they back.
Very true. Very true. And, you know, you mentioned that, too, about the fact that Joe really didn't win this election. Trump lost it. And, again, Trump was in the driver's seat. I still firmly believe Trump would have won re-election had the situation with George Floyd not occurred. If that situation doesn't happen, he survives COVID. I think he survives COVID, and he may have squeaked by, but he would have won re-election. But the situation with Floyd, it's going to take, in my opinion, another situation just like that for the American people to have faith in another Democrat. Otherwise, we're going to get a Reagan-esque ass-kicking come 2 years. And God knows if they put that man back on stage. And at that point, if you're the Democrats, do you not just make Joe the sacrificial lamb and say, you know what, Joe, we're going to leave you at the top of the ticket, but let's be honest, you're going to lose?
I would hope not. Because, I mean, that makes him look even worse to know that he's going to lose, and they still say, well, we're putting you at the top of the ticket. And that's saying, we're still backing you. We're still saying we're backing you.
I mean, I can see your point there. The confidence would be lost, so on and so forth. I have a hard time thinking that why would you peddle out your best candidate if you know you're going to lose? And right now, the Democrats are in a no-win position, in my opinion, just based on everything we've seen so far. And one of the biggest negatives that this man has is his son, Hunter Biden. That man has got to be ready to disown this kid at this point, because every fucking turn, just like his foreign policy failures, he's obviously failed as well, I can't say he's failed as a father. That's kind of mean. You can't really say that, you know, if freaking his kid went out and killed a bunch of people, you don't blame the mass murderer's parents, you blame the mass murderer. But still, he's obviously ready to fucking cut Hunter off. And we have a story here from Fox News on what is going on with Hunter Biden.
Federal prosecutors still weighing charges for Hunter Biden as the investigation into the president's son picks up steam. But some critics are skeptical it'll even happen. Michael Goodwin, writing in the New York Post, quote, I don't think the attorney general has the stomach to approve an indictment of the son of the man who appointed him, especially when the Biden administration already is drowning and Democrats face a midterm shellacking. Here to react, outnumbered co-host Kayleigh McEnany. She's also hosting All Access Live for Fox Nation here at Turning Point. We'll get to that in a moment. Kayleigh, great to see you.
Good to see you, Pete. Yes.
What do you make of this? Because it looks now like some sort of charges are imminent in that Hunter Biden never filed as a foreign agent either, which feels like 101 in Washington, D.C. But if they do find things, will they actually prosecute?
I don't think so, is my guess. You know, Jonathan Turley made a really good point, and it's this. If there is a plea deal on a FARA charge, Foreign Agent Registration Act, the question is going to become, why didn't you call the big guy, who we know, Tony Bobolinsky told us, is Joe Biden. He is a material witness to this. We know about his intricacy and relationship with Hunter Biden. They talked about his business dealings. We have the voicemail. So how can you just reach a very generous plea agreement without talking to a main witness there? Sure. Also, I'd just remind you, Paul Manafort, remember, he was convicted on a FARA charge.
Yes.
He got the maximum 60-month sentence. So if Hunter Biden gets a plea deal, Paul Manafort gets the maximum 60-month sentence in prison. What a disparity that would be.
But it almost feels like a disparity like that is inevitable. I mean, that's the frustrating part. All you want to see is equal justice. And what you see is, you know, Trump supporters, administration officials being dragged out of their house in the dead of night, or January 6th, folks involved there being treated one way, when it almost feels like a foregone conclusion that Hunter's going to escape at some level.
It does. And Turley also pointed out, look, we need a special counsel here. a special counsel. Remember, Jeff Sessions brought in that special counsel.
Yeah.
Mueller got a lot of criticism. I don't believe that that was the right call, but nevertheless, just an appearance of a conflict of interest led Jeff Sessions to appoint a special counsel. There is a huge conflict of interest here, not just an appearance of one, because as you know, the Attorney General is appointed by President Biden. This is President Biden's son. We need a special counsel, and anything short of that is going to raise a ton of questions about conflict of
And
interest.
that's what Michael Goodwin points out. Is he really, Merrick Garland, really going to prosecute the son of the guy that appointed him?
Of course not.
Of course not. So here we have it. You've had a chance to be here for a couple of days at the Student Action Summit from Turning Point, hosting All Access Live for Fox Nation. We often get to do that together. Sorry.
Okay, I don't care about the rest of that. Nobody cares about Turning Point. Anyway, with that being said, they brought up some very key and valid points, in my opinion, as far as the Hunter Biden situation goes. Hunter Biden will not be charged in this. Anybody that thinks that Hunter Biden is going to be charged and going to end up behind bars I laugh at you. How many politicians' kids, including our current governor here in the state of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson's kids, have been busted for something? Is it on the level that Hunter Biden committed a crime? Absolutely not. But how many of those people end up actually facing jail time? 90% of them end up like fucking, go do a book tour and fucking give the money to charity or some shit. Like, that's what it ends up being. There's no way Hunter Biden ends up behind bars, especially not with Merrick Garland, like they said, at the helm of this investigation, correct?
Yeah, I agree with you. They have had what kind of evidence against Clintons for doing all kinds of stuff? Nothing ever even gets charged. What I find incredibly funny is they push and push and push for these special counsels.
Mm-hmm. And they got it in January 6th. They got a whole fucking commission.
I don't know why they don't just, have the attorney generals do the job that they're supposed to do.
I agree. And here's the thing with Steve Bannon, not that I think he should have been. He committed a crime, what have you. But was Steve Bannon offered a plea deal? Was Steve Bannon offered anything? Like they said, I'd like to see equal justice here. If he's not fucking getting charged with something, then there's obviously a miscarriage of justice. Merrick Garland, obviously there's a conflict of interest there. Manny, if you have the opportunity to have your you're going to tell me you're an upstanding citizen who would. But if your boss's child committed a crime, are you turning your boss's child into the police and having them arrested? Do what?
And that's the thing about it. You don't even have to be the one that says that it's you doing it. There are so many anonymous ways you can create leaks. You can create all kinds of stuff.
I agree.
To get all the information out there. The problem is nobody wants to put the information out there. They give you little hints and little details, but they don't give concrete information.
It's because that's not the story they want to run with. It's not the fancy story. Oh, the president's son's doing this. This is not the story that everybody wants to run with. Everybody is so obsessed with this January 6th commission that they don't understand that there should be a special counsel appointed in this case. Merrick Garland is in a conflict of interest, and nothing is going to come of this. And like you made the perfect analogy. It's the Clintons. It's the Clintons, and nothing is going to stick, unfortunately, just like, with Hillary and her emails, just like every other problem that has besieged the Democratic Party. Whereas you see Republicans going to jail, never seems to happen on the left side of the aisle. And it's getting quite frustrating to see the unequal treatment of the two parties.
Yeah.
It's getting absolutely ridiculous. And we talked earlier about foreign policy failures. And in the sports world, there has been quite a story about this LIV or Live golf tournament that took place over the weekend at one of Trump's golf courses over there on the West Coast, and Trump showed up, and they asked him, "Is he going to run?" And obviously, he avoided the question and just said, "Hey, you're going to be very happy." Let's be honest, that motherfucker's licking his lips at this point.
Right, but I mean, there's a certain time window that you can announce that.
But 9/11 families are coming out and questioning the U.S. allowing a Saudi-backed event to take place inside of the U.S. And we have a story here from NBC News on that.
Tonight, outrage from families of 9/11 victims in a new ad blasting the upcoming Live Golf Tournament for its Saudi Arabian backing. It's happening at former President Trump's club.
This golf tournament is taking place 50 miles from Ground Zero.
It's disgusting. The ad, released by the group 9/11 Justice, following a separate protest near Trump Bedminster Golf Club, where the first round will take place this weekend.
We are going to make it as painful as possible and unenjoyable as possible for those involved.
And now the National Press Club piling on with a scathing statement calling on Americans to boycott the tournament due to the Saudi government's alleged involvement in the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018, saying, "Do not attend, do not watch it on television, let it fail." The Saudis deny involvement in both 9/11 and Khashoggi's murder. Liv responding to criticism, telling NBC News, quote, "These families have our deepest sympathy. While some may not agree, we believe golf is a force for good around the world." The backlash comes amid a seismic shift in professional golf, following the founding of Live Golf, which aims to compete with the PGA Tour. Live, which is partly funded by a $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, enjoys the backing of Donald Trump. He's had a strained relationship with the PGA Tour after the league withdrew a tournament from one of his courses during his 2016 campaign and another after January 6. The PGA announced in early June that all of the 17 PGA players who signed up to participate in the first Live Golf Tournament would be suspended from the organization. Several of those players chose to resign their memberships. As a result of the ban, PGA Tour is now facing a federal probe over possible anti-competitive practices. Live Golf, meanwhile, enticing players with massive cash purses. This weekend's $20 million purse, nearly double that of any on the PGA Tour, and even more than the famed U.S. Open. It was enough to win over golf superstar Phil Mickelson, who responded to criticism at last month's press event.
This is an opportunity that gives me a chance to have the most balance in my life going forward.
Meanwhile, other prominent golfers such as Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy choosing to stick to the PGA.
Any decision that you make in your life that's purely for money usually doesn't end up going the right way.
A harsh criticism of his colleagues, but one shared by many of the 9/11 families protesting the tournament.
What this tournament will do is showcase how easily people can be corrupted by money.
But the ire isn't directed just at golfers. Protesters are concerned with the current president's trip to Saudi Arabia, too.
It was disgraceful. It was painful to watch. Such a nonchalant way of meeting with him. You need to have a really serious conversation with him about September 11th. And he blew it.
Rahima Ellis, NBC News.
Thanks for watching our YouTube.
So, Manny, I know we don't often go into the sports world, but there really is a political piece to this story. And I'm going to start off with, what the hell is the U.S. doing allowing the Saudi Arabian government to fund a golf tournament in the country where terrorists that were harbored in Saudi Arabia 21 years ago, coming up here in a little over a month?
They want to compete with the PGA. Bottom line, they went and found people with money to be able to compete. And the thing that they left out of that story, anyways, is talking about WWE and their trips to Saudi Arabia for entertainment purposes. So
It's not unprecedented.
Right. When you're pushing a business, it would behoove you to find a money person to be able to dump some of those expenses on, so that everything doesn't come out of one or two people's pockets.
Right, I would agree.
Saudi Arabia has money.
Do you have any? Do you understand the outrage of the 9/11 families? Or do you
definitely. Definitely.
So,
but my question is, why is the outrage focused more on a golf league that is headed by Trump?
Is the golf league headed by Trump? I know they talked about Trump and him being involved.
Yeah. Trump is really involved in it. You're right. It may not be headed by, but it seems like the outrage is more prevalent because it's something that Trump has to do with.
Which you would think, and that was going to be one of my questions. Wouldn't he understand that he probably shouldn't be stepping in that pile of shit before, if he was thinking about making a run? That's a pretty massive pile of shit.
Basically, the way I understood that story was that the PGA had an issue with Trump. So since they kind of pulled away from Trump, Trump went and found somebody else. That being the LIV. Now then, whether it was Trump directly or the LIV or the combination of the two, getting Saudi Arabia and their money involved, who knows?
Absolutely. And they also brought up a good point, though. I'll toss it to, not only do I understand the 9/11 victims when attacking, the LIV tournament, but they brought it back to the Saudi Arabia trip that we didn't get to speak about on the show that Joe Biden took. And he didn't take the time. He was very nonchalant during this Middle East trip. He was, and again, it goes back to the foreign policy failures. He didn't, confront them about harboring the terrorists that orchestrated and carried out the attacks on September 11th, 2001. What is he thinking? Is he thinking? I'm starting to honestly buy the whole fucking Alzheimer's, and he's just so old he's dumb. Fist bumping the government of a country that harbored terrorists. Could you imagine George W. Bush doing that? I'm just saying.
No, I can't, because George Bush was a more sane person.
Touche.
Honestly, what I'm looking at is you don't always, as the president of the United States, make your schedule.
True.
You have people that make that schedule for you and let you know where you're supposed to be and where you're expected at different places.
But do you not get to at least have the right to say, hey, I'm going to bring this shit up? And be like, hey, by the way, we're still kind of pissed at you for being involved in that. I kind of would like an explanation, and my people would like an explanation.
And then that goes back to the media.
True.
How do we know that Biden didn't bring some of that up?
That's possible.
We only know what the media shows.
And of course, all the media showed was that damn fist bump that made him look pretty damn bad.
Right.
And speaking of the media and a media fucking circus that is still going on, Brittany Griner remains behind bars in Russian custody. And the question I'm starting to ask myself is this. Yes, Brittany is incarcerated. She shouldn't be. They're fucking playing political games. But the thing we always forget about is, why are we not talking about the Americans that are still stuck in Russia? We have a story specifically on the Griner situation and her appearing in court over the last week in a Russian court from ABC News.
NBA star Brittany Griner is testifying in a Russian courtroom today. She pleaded guilty, but claims she didn't intend to break the law when she brought the cannabis oil into the country. Foreign correspondent Maggie Rulli has the latest for us.
After 5 months detained in Russia, we expect to hear from Brittany Griner for the first time. Griner, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, was visiting Russia to play basketball in the off-season when she was arrested in mid-February at a Moscow airport after vape canisters containing cannabis oil were found in her luggage. Griner has pled guilty, but insists it was a mistake, saying she accidentally packed it when traveling. On Tuesday, her defense calling a doctor who specializes in drug and alcohol abuse treatment to the stand, who confirmed Griner had a legal U.S.-issued medical prescription for the cannabis and used it to treat pain and injuries. The medical testimony and Griner's admission aimed at getting her a more lenient sentence.
It can't hurt for her to testify in court. Anything that she and others can do to try to alleviate the sentence is all something that she and her team are going to be looking to do.
The WNBA star seen in court earlier this week, locked in a steel cage, holding up 2 photos of her wife, Sherelle, giving this message to our ABC News producer inside the courtroom.
How do you feel? Do you have any complaints?
No complaints. Waiting patiently.
The U.S. government under pressure to bring her home.
Well, her testimony is seen by legal experts as a last-ditch effort for a milder sentence because the vast majority, about 99% of people who are arrested on drug charges in Russia are given the max sentence of 10 years in prison.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much. And for more on this, let's bring in ABC News contributor and columnist at USA Today, Christine Brennan. Good morning, Christine. Let's talk about Brittany now. She's taken the stand, and she says that she returned to Russia because it was the main part of the season, playoffs, but knew the U.S. warned Americans against going there. She also said that she traveled to Moscow multiple times. What do you make of what we're hearing so far? And do you think this could help her case at all?
Kira, this is certainly humanizing Brittany Griner. You know, we've heard so much over the last 5 months, the Russian side, the videos, and now we're finally getting a chance to hear from her. And I do think this will help humanize her. Will it give her a leniency, maybe the mercy of the court? Will there be a chance that her sentence, instead of 10 years, might be 5 years or whatever? That's a possibility. I think anything's possible. The idea that it was a prescription and it was a mistake, as she's saying in court today, that she was tired, she'd just flown all night, and she had COVID. So all those things, as Maggie was describing, it was a difficult situation for her. I think, again, that makes her more human. That makes her relatable. That makes you, and hopefully the court in Russia makes you feel sorry for her. And that's exactly the point here, to try to have a more lenient sentence, Kira, and then obviously the big part then happens after that, which is the negotiations to get her back home.
Anything else that she has said so far today, because we're kind of monitoring it in real time, that stands out to you?
I think the fact that she had COVID, I think the fact that, you know, that people can relate to that. Also, she was talking about how hard it was for her to understand actually what was being said to her, that she had to get her phone out to use the translating app to be able to understand what they were saying. Again, Kira, it humanizes her. It makes you feel sorry. It makes you understand. It makes you, whatever it might be, anything that can give Brittany Griner an edge in that courtroom. It's kind of like a sports analogy. You know, she needs whatever she can get to help her case, in this case, to try to win hearts and minds. I think that's what hit me this morning.
And her defense attorney was called to the stand yesterday, you remember, and confirmed that she had a legal U.S.-issued medical prescription for the cannabis to treat pain and injuries. So how important is that, and what kind of impact do you think that could have on the trial?
Well, it certainly shows that she was not, there was no ill will, that she was allowed to have it. This wasn't recreational. And I think the explanation for the judge, for the courtroom, that this is something that athletes do to try to alleviate pain, I think, again, that helps her case. But it's all about moving forward. She'll probably be found guilty. And then the question is how quickly they can get her home.
Got it. Christine Brennan, straight from the car there on the road. You working a big story, Christine?
I'm actually always, Kira, always. Yes, never a dull moment. Sorry.
We're glad you could call in just so long we have you. Great to see you. Thanks, Christine.
You as well. Thank you.
Shut up, George Stephanopoulos. Anyway, with that being said, Manny, we're talking about this process, and they're talking about how they're humanizing Brittany Griner, and they're doing all of this. Where is the aid for the other Americans that are currently actually incarcerated illegally? I understand that Griner had the medical prescription and what have you, but let's be honest, she did have the cartridges for containing the cannabis oil. So she actually did what they're accusing her of. Are they broadly overreaching and making a bigger deal out of this than what it should be? Yes. But what about the people that are over there that have trumped up bullshit charges? Are those people getting the same type of representation? Are those people getting the same type of people from the U.S. government and the White House fucking actively trying to get them out of that country? No.
No.
And that's ridiculous.
No, we don't even know the majority of them's names. I can tell you that much.
Exactly. And it's another case in this country where if you have money and you have this celebrity status, you're going to be treated way differently than the average everyday American. Or in this case, hell, most of these people that are illegally incarcerated aren't average everyday Americans. They're fucking people who work for our government.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for words at how people can't be outraged for the people that, like you said, we don't even know their name. But people are completely fucking outraged. And
they've been there a lot longer than Brittany has.
Exactly. Screaming at the top of their lungs that Brittany needs to come home. I'm not going to deny that Brittany needs to come home. And she needs to stay her ass at home, too, by the way. Money ain't worth this bullshit. But with that being said, what the hell, dude? Where's this outrage? There's thousands, not just in Russia. There's thousands, if not more, scattered throughout all sorts of countries that are illegally detained that do not like the United States. And we're worried about one right now. One's getting the headlines.
Yeah. And we probably would have never even brought up any of the others had this one not been arrested.
You're right about that. And
so
that's a sad microcosm of where we are as Americans, too.
I don't know what you expect, though, because you look at the homeless in this country that get pushed to the back for refugees. You look at veterans from this country's wars that get shifted to the side because of people that just want to come across the border. So we've got a history of this.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Manny. And it's depressing. It's sad, and it's absolutely ridiculous. You asked, what do I want out of this? I want the exact same thing that we just talked about with Hunter Biden. I want equal representation. Fuck. We all have an equal vote, so why the fuck aren't we getting equal representation from our government?
I think I'm going to start looking and see where I can go retire.
Shit. Canada sounds nice this time of year. I'm just saying.
Yeah, still high dollar amounts to live there.
True.
You know, thing like Portugal or.
Ooh, Portugal may be a little too hot though.
There's a town in Mexico that actually they say is pretty good.
Oh,
really? I may check that. Last I knew, the trade, the currency trade rate was 11-1.
Oh shit! You're gonna be living high on the hog out there.
Yeah. So imagine.
Hello. Hey.
Imagine taking $1 here and it turns into $11 over there. So if you take a few paychecks, you know.
You're going to be living nice down there in Mexico
Right.
south of the border. I'm just saying. Okay. Last subject before we get out of here with our American Idiot of the Week. Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, it was announced, suspended 6 games for today. The suspension coming after 25 civil lawsuits were filed. We have a story from MSNBC.
Some breaking news this morning out of the sports world. ESPN is reporting that Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson has been suspended for 6 games in the 2022-2023 NFL season. That suspension coming after Watson was accused of sexual assault and inappropriate conduct during massage sessions in civil lawsuits filed by 25 different women. Of those 25 lawsuits, 1 was dropped, and 23 of the remaining 24 have been settled out of court. ESPN is also reporting that Watson will not be fined. Watson signed a contract in March that will pay him $230 million guaranteed over the next 5 years, the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history.
Jonathan, I just... And I think a lot of Cleveland Browns fans would agree with me. It's just nothing short of extraordinary that this franchise with, I would say an up-and-coming franchise. They've got some great players on this team, but that they would bet their future on this guy with all of the legal problems that he's facing.
Yeah, they went into this eyes wide open. Watson, of course, didn't play last year as a member of the Texans with this legal matter looming over his head. And the Browns traded for him anyway and gave him a record-breaking contract. And he's had a signing bonus of over $45 million. That's not impacted at all by the suspension. He gets to keep all of that.
That doesn't seem right.
And the 6 games seems remarkably light. The chatter in the last few months was that he was going to be suspended potentially for an entire season. Now he's only 6 games, despite having been credibly accused by 25 different women. There's a lot of Browns fans out there really unhappy with this suspension. And it also just looks another moment of the NFL's justice system being looked out of whack here. Remember, Tom Brady got suspended 4 games for allegedly deflating footballs. And just this past year, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley apparently bet some money, did some sports betting, which, like the NFL, like so many other professional leagues, more and more embracing online sports betting. Ridley suspended for an entire year over matters of a few $1,000s, and yet Watson gets 6 games for this. It's, I think, a lot of Cleveland Browns fans not very happy with this entire situation.
Not good for the credibility of the NFL. Coming up.
So, Manny, they kind of brought up some of my points that I wanted to bring up here. I don't think 6 games is enough. Whether he was guilty or not, the NFL has, and what they suspended him under was the personal conduct policy. You suspended a man for a full season for betting on football games, but a man can put himself in a bad position 25 times, and he gets 6 games for that. I understand the anger. Like, the NFL fucked this up, in my opinion.
The 2 things that I look at, number 1, as of right now, everything is an accusation.
True. I mean, there are 23 out of 25 that were settled out of court.
The Deflategate and the sports betting, they were guilty of.
Okay.
So, yes, their sentences are worse. This 6-game suspension is for accusations. So what they're going to do is they're going to take these first 6 games while they are investigating what they can. I
So you
guarantee
think
you.
this was just to get the suspension out there to give them more time?
Yes.
Okay.
Even if they find one person that it turns out everything is true and there was some form of rape, whether it was like Tupac was, put in jail for forcefully touching the buttocks of a woman. I'm going to believe that the NFL will come down harder.
Okay. Okay. Do you think that, in this era of Me Too and everything, you obviously spoke to how you think this is just an initial shot across the bow. Do you think that that people would be right to be upset with the level of punishment, or do you think this is right on track with where it should be because nothing has been proven in a court of law? And mind
It's
you,
hard
no
to say.
criminal charges have been.
And the reason I'm hesitant in saying anything like that is because this is post-Floyd America.
Right.
Everything can still be attributed to racism. Oh, the only reason he got that much was because the NFL is racist. I mean, we just had that coach that, threw all those racial remarks out.
Mm-hmm.
So until they get concrete evidence, it's hard to punish harder.
Right.
But
true.
once they get the evidence, then they can punish harder.
And I mean, to be fair, it's not an exact science. I will say this. If they suspended him for a full season and it came out that Deshaun Watson was never even in the fucking massage parlors, we'd be having a completely different conversation about how shitty the NFL is for what they do.
Right.
I mean, it's one of those situations where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
No. I mean, you're going to have people that think that way, yes, but we are living in a country that you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty.
True.
So there are a lot of people that have the argument that he shouldn't be suspended at all because right now there are just accusations.
That's a fair assessment, I guess.
Once you start suspending somebody, now you are punishing them for something you don't even know if they're guilty of.
That's a fair assessment. I would agree. I would agree that
and then you have to look at, and for the people that think I'm just some kind of bigot or something, you have to look at what one person views as sexual misconduct. You have to look at
very true
versus others. So, me telling somebody that I think they're beautiful,
mm-hmm.
Some people would take that as, oh, that's a nice guy. Other people would actually push the limits and say, oh, well, he was sexually harassing me.
Ooh, touche.
So, I mean, it depends on how people take it.
Yeah, very good point. And these are things that I'm glad I bring up on these shows because you make valid points. It'll be interesting to see what the NFL does because I mean, if they let it die here, then okay, maybe we do need to have a discussion about where we're allowing things to happen or what we're allowing to happen in our league. But, if it comes out that Deshaun Watson was never in the damn massage parlors, maybe 6 games was maybe it was a little.
And even if he went into a massage parlor and just asked the person giving him a massage if he got a happy ending, is that necessarily sexual harassment?
Ooh, it's a very good point. Robert Kraft, the NFL, the owner of the New England Patriots, got in a very similar situation, and he didn't get punished at all. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this continues to play out because the situations are very similar. Kraft actually got busted getting some hand relief in the massage parlor, if you get my point. Whereas nobody's busted Deshaun Watson yet. So interesting. As far as my American Idiot of the Week, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. We're going back to Joe. Joe is failing at every stretch. You know what? Actually, I'm going to expand it. The entire Democratic Party, the fact that they're, having to go through this is unprecedented. That they don't even want the guy back, potentially as a nominee. It's getting pretty rough over there in left land.
Yes, it is. I've actually got a hat trick, yo.
Oh, okay.
For starters, I'm lumping these two together. Trevor Noah and Van Jones.
I saw something about Trevor Noah. I didn't see what happened, so.
They're flip-flopping.
Okay.
Both of them were very anti-Trump, and now that they're at this point, now they're not like pro Trump, but they're definitely talking about stuff like this wouldn't have happened if Trump was still in.
Ooh.
So Trevor Noah was very outspoken against Trump. Now, like I said, he's been talking in favor of him. Van Jones, who is a CNN analyst,
right?
He was literally crying tears of joy when Joe Biden won the election.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about how this is a redemption. This, everything's going to start going better now. And now he says that those 83 million voters are heartbroken.
Yeah.
At the economy. So the whole flip-flopping thing.
Mm-hmm.
My third American idiot of the week is the California sheriff, and I did not go back and get his name, but California sheriff who used county funds to transport 4 officers from California to Indiana and then paid for hotel rooms for them to stay, all because the sheriff's friend had paid to get a Batmobile replica built by a garage that builds Batmobile replicas.
You're lying to me right
now. No. This guy used county funds to go raid a garage because his friend was moved to the bottom of the list. Now get this. He paid 50% of the price.
Mind you, he doesn't have jurisdiction out there either.
I know, but he paid 50% up front.
Right.
Whenever the garage owner told him, okay, I need an additional however much it was, the guy did not send it.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't cancel the order. They just bumped his name to the bottom of the list.
Yeah,
which upset the guy.
Mm-hmm.
The guy being upset got his sheriff friend to take a crew out there, and they raided this garage.
I mean, I can't say I'm surprised because it is California. You did say California, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not surprised because it's California, but
I'm surprised that Indiana allowed officers from California to come in and do it.
Right? Those officers are lucky they're not sitting in jail. Like zero jurisdiction. Y'all couldn't go down to LA and do this shit. Y'all motherfuckers went out of the state and raided some. Wow, that is
the funny part was the garage owner had mentioned that when they came in, they said that they wanted everything involved with that that transaction for the Batmobile. So he assumed they were going to take the unfinished car that he had gotten moved down to. But no, they just took like 3 files that had paperwork in it.
Wow.
So that's
sometimes you just got to shake your head.
I know.
Oh my goodness. Oh, they are so lucky they're not in jail. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much all we got for tonight. Manny, anything else you got for him?
I am done.
Right on. Well, we will see you guys next week on another episode of The American Idiots. Good night, everybody.
That I welcome this kind of examination because people